I want to read a little piece here by Alan Keyes. Alan was going to come and speak today. Alan is a great man too, and I respect him a great deal. Alan and I have a difference of view, and it's a good difference of view. It's kind of a little bit, I'm not equating myself with John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, not at that level. Maybe someday, who knows. But Alan believes that the electoral system can solve the problems in our country. In fact, if that was the case, he would be president of the United States.
That's right.
One of the smartest guys around. And he ran against Barack Obama, you might remember, back in 2004 when I was running for the Senate in Florida. Unfortunately, Barack Obama won. And Alan Keyes is not the president. Is not the senator from Illinois, much more the president. But I want to read what he wrote because he believes the electoral system works. I believe it can work. But before it works, we have to clean house.
Amen.
We have to get rid of the rats here in Washington.
Amen.
And we've got to use whatever means we can peacefully and legally, like Mahatma Gandhi did in South Africa and India, like Lech Walesa did in Poland, where Drago comes from when he helped Reagan and Thatcher and the Pope remove communism, is that when we clean house here and remove government, as we now know it, then we'll be free to have good elections again. But I'll give you an example of why the elections don't work, and then I'll read you what Alan said. We invited virtually every Tea Party representative to come here today. I am Tea Party. Some people said I was the Tea Party before the Tea Party was cool. I was out there fighting a long time ago. And I'm very proud to have the Tea Party on our side, and we're bringing them in. But my good Tea Party friends up in Congress were scared to come because they don't want to ask for his resignation. They're more content in going on Fox News and making a name for themselves than actually doing the heavy lifting that we the people need to do. But I'm going to read you what Alan said. You tell me whether you agree with that or whether you agree with our approach. On Saturday morning, October 16th, I read a piece on WorldNet Daily by Larry Klayman promoting the Independence Day, November 19, 2013 rally. After pondering its content, Alan had originally wanted to come and speak, I made the decision regretfully to withdraw from participation in the rally. In explaining my decision, I shared with him the following thoughts, which he has graciously consented to read to those in attendance. A magnanimous gesture that only increases my already great affection and admiration for his good character and work, and I feel the same way about Alan Keyes. Larry contacted me some weeks ago about participating in this event. I was inclined to do so because of the great respect I have for Larry Klayman and for his work over many years at Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch. He has shown courage and a deep concern for principle in his efforts to expose and oppose various aspects of the assault against America's constitutional republic. On account of this friendship and respect for his long and passionate commitment to liberty, I eventually agreed to participate in the event. However, I did so despite the fact that the strategy of Arab Spring-style mass action it advocates diverges from the focus on grassroots election-focused mobilization that I believe is the key to building a political culture and gaining a political result, consistent with America's founding principles and with the Constitution of Government America's founding generation approved based on those principles. As presented in the Declaration of Independence, American self-government is predicated upon God-endowed rights. Those rights depend in turn upon a claim of right that reflects the individual's choice to accept and act upon the responsibilities and obligations with which, by way of good conscience, God informs human nature. Individual action and responsibility in accord with conscience are therefore the substance of self-government. It is not to be found in occasional demonstrations of public feeling, however general the passion that gives for them. For Americans, therefore, the archetypical individual expressions of liberty are actions undertaken in response to conscience, which implement the Creator's goodwill for the existence and perpetuation of human life. The unalienable rights inherent in family life are the perfect example of this liberty. Parents voluntarily accept the responsibility to preserve and rear their children. Responding to their natural consciousness of God's will, they consent to be the servants of a helpless infant, a being with no power to coerce them except the quiet-spoken commands of God-endowed conscience. This conscientiousness, voluntary submissions to God's will is the paradigm for government based upon consent of the governed. It defines freedom and self-government according to the laws of nature and of nature's God. For the people as a whole, the archetypical expression of this freedom takes place in the elections during which individuals gather themselves in order to make deliberate choices that will represent their voluntary submission to God's good will on behalf of the whole community they comprise. Such elections, carefully provided for in the U.S. Constitution, are the key to preserving and perpetuating America's liberty. In such elections, the body of the voters acts on the whole, but they are supposed to do so as responsible individuals, choosing in light of God-endowed standard of right that authorizes their choice. This electoral mobilization of the people in the exercise of their constitutional sovereignty differs fundamentally from the action of essentially dehumanized masses as envisioned by the ideologies, whatever they call themselves, that base their understanding on politics of the fallacy of godless dialectical materialism. For several years I've articulated on my blog, in my weekly WorldNet Daily columns, and in speeches and media appearances of all sorts, a strategic approach to victory over the anti-American forces warring against the principles and institutions of the U.S. Constitution, and the implementation of Republican self-government it represents. I accepted Larry Klayman's invitation to participate in this rally, despite some divergence in our strategic views, because I was convinced that I would, in any case, be an opportunity and have an opportunity to offer committed patriots attending the event my strategic understanding, the strategic understanding of restoring a conscientiously representative electoral process. However, in the days just prior to the rally, the tenor of Mr. Klayman's promotion of this gathering seemed to be more and more incompatible with my conviction that the present crisis calls for grassroots action, devised with strict regard for the responsibilities of citizenship the Constitution imposes on the American people. This constitutional self-discipline distinguishes the constitutional mobilization of the American people from the eruptive mass action undertaken in Egypt and elsewhere by subject peoples who have never, in fact, successfully implemented constitutional self-government and who therefore have no real heritage or experience of it. Americans know, or ought to know, better than to think that they can effectively demand a constitutional change in government by angrily taking to the streets. They should also know that they have no need to beg from would-be princes and oligarchs when they can procure by constitutional means if they have the courage intelligently organize their sovereign will and do so. This is especially true here and now, in the full dawn of the 21st century, when individuals have access to the technological means to build networks of responsible action that can gather and keep track of the votes needed to win the most crucial constitutional elections, and thus know that they have done so well before Election Day. Despite my respect and friendship for Larry Klayman's work, the tenor of his latter promotions portrayed the November 19th rally in a way that only diverges from, but utterly contradicts the election-focused mentality that I believe must characterize the spirit and activities of American patriots, willing to do their utmost to revitalize America's constitutional republic by constitutional means. The United States of America is not Egypt. To restore their self-government to the wise foundations envisioned by our founders, we must act like Americans, not like Egyptians. At great personal sacrifice, I have tried consistently to speak the truth about the fatal threat that Barack Obama and his elitist faction masters and collaborators pose to America's liberty. I deeply share and have consistently promoted the view that where it is applicable, they must be impeached and removed from office. I repeatedly and strenuously advocate building the political networks needed to achieve the majorities in Congress required by the Constitution to achieve this aim. But such constitutional results are not to be won by passionate masses momentarily venting their righteous anger in the streets. They can actually be achieved only by building disciplined grassroots networks with specific electoral goals. Right now, the imperative goal must be to reject and replace the elitist faction's treacherous sham, so-called two-party system. Achieving that goal depends on getting individual Americans at the grassroots throughout the nation to focus on independently exercising their sovereignty as a people in their election districts. They can do so in the 2004 elections by demanding that every candidate for national office sign a pledge to make it their first priority to impeach and remove Obama and his collaborators from office, as the Constitution provides. By backing that demand with an organized commitment from millions of patriotic voters to give their support exclusively to candidates who sign the impeachment pledge, and by acting with determination to place pledged candidates on the ballot everywhere the presently established parties fail to do so. In order to build toward this individual citizen, we'll have to reach out to the personal networks and actively identify the millions of impeachment voters needed to defend Americans' liberty. If they resolve to persistently, patiently add to this outreach effort every day, we will prevail. We will defeat the crafty, powerful opposition of the elitist elite that now wields inordinate power over money and media resources, which are otherwise likely to be decisive in contemporary U.S. elections. Obviously, this electoral result cannot be achieved by episodic mass actions that passionately demand this or that from Congress, but without building an electoral context to replace the corrupt political culture that now poisons its composition. Without that focus, such mass actions may well simply distract from what needs to be done, allowing the corrupt sham party system to triumph by default. I therefore regretfully made the decision to withdraw my participation in this rally. Larry Klayman's passion for liberty is right and righteous, but the tenor of his presentation of the Second American Revolution seems to be more consistent with the purposes of those striving to replace than those determined to revitalize and restore the Constitution providentially conceived in the light of the First Revolution. In that light, Americans are not supposed to be moldable masses, uprising now and then at the command of their leaders. They are, each of them, supposed in their own way to be leaders under God's command, commissioned by their own deliberate choice, to raise up faithful representatives of the conscientious political will with which He, God, endowed their nature, and which He, God, may still have in store for the nation, willing to return to His good grace. And in that spirit, may patriotic Americans go forward together and prevail for liberty's sake. I thank Alan for that, because we are not a bunch of yes men here. When I tell you to say no, you don't say no. We are people who think. And I'm inviting Alan to our second Continental Congress in Philadelphia in some weeks to debate, to decide what it is we need to do. But you saw Bob Barr here today, early on. Bob and I, and some others like Howard Phillips, are the ones who initiated the impeachment of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was guilty of much more than simply having a dalliance with Monica Lewinsky in the White House. While he was messing with Monica Lewinsky, Osama bin Laden was plotting to mess with us. We did not succeed in impeaching and convicting Bill Clinton, no more than Andrew Jackson was impeached and convicted, no more than any American president has ever been removed for office. And believe me, we've had some really bad ones. Nor have we impeached any member of Congress in decades, nor any federal judge. In fact, the last federal judge we impeached was Alice E. Hastings from Miami, and after he was impeached, he then ran for Congress and became a congressman. That is where we are right now. We do not have representatives up there in Congress. We do not have a president of the United States who's loyal to this country. We do not have a court system that has the courage to take on who we are and restore the vision of our founding fathers. Back in 1776, and the time leading up to that, the founding fathers had the same debate as I'm having with Alan. The founding fathers believed that they could solve their differences with King George within the British system, within the system of laws. That became impossible when he, in fact, subverted that legal system, as Obama is doing right now with executive orders, whether it's Obamacare or anything else. And in fact, removed the criminal justice system back to London, where we couldn't even determine our own fate. That became impossible when he sent his militias, his armies, to seize our weapons, to break into our homes, to rape our women, and to harm our children. That became impossible when the King of England refused to consider any of our grievances as set forth in the Declaration of Independence. And that's where we are today. And that's why we must rise up And that's why we must use peaceful civil disobedience. And that's why we must put fear, as Jefferson said, into our government. That either we can do it the nice way or we can do it another way. Now we're trying it the nice way. And if that nice way does not succeed, we have alternative legal methods available to us. The electoral system has produced nothing. The electoral system produces people that show up for rallies that are politically convenient and safe. Where is one Tea Party representative today? We invited all of them to come. They're nowhere to be found, and that's a disgrace. George Washington. So you be the judge. Let us debate what we need to do. We want to see all of you reconvened in Philadelphia in some weeks, and we'll announce what it is we're doing. We'll have representatives from all 50 states. We will elect a government of waiting, and we will show the world, just like Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, and the other founding fathers. We will tell the world why it is we are declaring our independence again on November 19th, 2013. And because we are unique, we are a small group of people. So were the founding fathers. It does not give us our strength. Our strength comes from God. We take orders only from Him. We don't take orders from Hussein over there. We take orders from our God, not his. So consequently, we are moving forward, and we look for your support and your help. We are all one. This is not about Larry Klayman. It's not about Freedom Watch. It's about the Reclaim America Now coalition. We are all one. I started it. All of you are going to finish it. God bless you. Thank you for coming. We have a few more speakers, but I wanted to give that speech now because I wanted to give my view to my good friend Alan Keyes, who has heartfelt feelings, who still believes idealistically that we can have a Congress and a president and a court system that serves the people. We can have that. But first, we're going to have to clean house.
Yeah.
And in fact, Jefferson said, Thomas Jefferson, that every 20 years, as I said earlier, we need a new revolution. We need to turn things over. And the government depends on the people's resistance. And we will lose our liberties if the people roll over, sit on their couches, watch Sunday TV, and watch football games, and don't get out and wage what we now declare to be our independence and our second American Revolution. Thank you, so help me God. We have a few more speakers, but I appreciate your coming. It's not warm today, but we're going to warm this country up with love and with resistance and with resolve. And to that, as our founding fathers said, we pledge our honor, our fortunes, of which we have very little today, and our lives. And we're willing to risk our lives for the foundations and the principles of this great nation. Thank you.